Good morning, everybody. I hope you've had a lovely weekend and that you're all safe and well. All things being equal, this will be the last week of our English home learning. This time next week, we should be all back together in our classroom. Today, obviously, is our normal grammar and punctuation day. What we're looking at doing is building on the work we did on frontal adverbials last week. So for that reason, our learning intention is to be able to use frontal adverbials in our writing. And what I'm going to be asking you to be thinking about is using them during the course of the week when we're doing our normal general writing in English. So first of all, what can you remember about frontal adverbial phrases from last week? If you're in school, I'm going to ask you to turn to a partner and talk to them. If you're at home, either maybe you could speak to an adult about it, or you could just have a little think yourself. What was a frontal adverbial phrase? Press pause now and press play when you're ready to come back. Okay, so if you remember, frontal adverbial phrases, they are a word or a group of words that we normally bolt onto the front of a sentence, onto a main clause. And usually it gives a bit of extra information about that sentence or about the main clause. It can be one word, it can be a group of words. Either way, on their own, the frontal adverbial phrase or the word will not make sense. Okay, it needs to have the main clause to help it make sense. And if you remember last week, I've asked you to focus for your frontal adverbials on either why, where, when, or how. Those four things there will help us. Okay, so if I'm thinking about, in these four sentences, I'm thinking about a bird that's flying in the sky. So I've said searching for food. That's my frontal adverbial phrase. The bird soared. Okay, so it's a why. Why was the bird soaring? It was because it was searching for its food. The next one is where. So high in the sky, the bird soared. Okay, so again, we've got the bird soared is the same main clause as the first sentence. But what I'm going to do is add a bit of extra information that tells me where the bird was soaring. In this case, high in the sky. The third one then, when. Again, we're using the same main clause, the bird soared, makes sense on its own, but we want to know when. So I've said in the clear morning air. So we know it's in the morning. That's telling you it's a when. The bird soared. So we've gone why, where, and when. We're now going to think about how. Now this one I haven't kept the same main clause. I've said the bird dived to catch its food. I mean, I guess I could have used the bird soared if I wanted to, but I wanted to just change it up a bit, to be honest. And I've said how, and I've said it's as fast as a torpedo. So I've used a simile there, but it's telling me how the bird moved. In this case, really fast. Okay, the bird dived to catch its food. So again, your main clause makes sense on its own, but we're just adding that bit of extra information to make the sentence top quality, a bit more interesting. The other thing I haven't mentioned, which I should have done, and I'm hoping that you will have mentioned when you had your discussion, to separate the subordinate clause, the frontal adverbial phrase and the main clause, we've got a comma. The comma is what I call demarcating. It is marking the boundary. It is telling you where the frontal adverbial phrase ends and where the main clause is going to begin. Really important that you put the comma in. And what I've noticed in school, certainly in my class, is quite often lots of you are writing using frontal adverbial phrases, but you don't always put the comma in, and that's a real shame. Okay, so just have a little think about that for me when you're writing this morning. Okay, now we're going to try and link this morning's sentence writing, frontal adverbial sentence writing, to the book that we started last week, Mouse, Bird, Snake, Wolf. And what I've got there is a picture. I've taken a snapshot of a picture from one of the pages in the book, and it's showing the gods who are being a little bit lazy. We talked about that last week. But what I want to think about is how could we write a sentence using frontal adverbial phrases? Now I'm going to ask you to press pause in a minute. And I'm going to ask you to think about whether or not, if you're in school, maybe you could use a whiteboard to have a go at writing a frontal adverbial about this picture. If you're at home, maybe you could do it on a little bit of scrap paper or something like that. It doesn't need to be in your book. And what I want you to do is to think about the 4 words, okay? If I go back a slide, why, where, when, and how. I want you to write a sentence, and then I want you to tell me maybe how the gods are doing something, maybe when they're doing it, perhaps where they're doing it, you know, that type of thing, okay? I really want you to show me that you've understood how you could put frontal adverbial phrases in. Now, I'm not expecting you to do 4 sentences, but maybe 1, and if you have time, 2 would be good. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to have a go at this. Can you have a go at using a frontal adverbial phrase? If you can't remember any frontal adverbial phrases, or you're struggling with that, don't forget, in the rainbow folder on the school website in English for this week, there will be the frontal adverbial sheet in there that you could always pull up and have a look at if you need it. Okay, if you're in school, we can give you a copy to look at. So just press pause now, 5 minutes, and then come back to me. Okay, welcome back. Well, I've only just done a couple of sentences for this morning, and I've done a how sentence and a when sentence. And what I've tried to do is show you how you could use one word for a frontal adverbial and a group of words to make a phrase for a frontal adverbial that actually they're both relevant, they can both be used, and they both have a comma to separate them from the main clause. So up here, I've got lazily the gods stared down at the amazing world that they had created. So it's a how sentence. Okay, the gods are looking down rather lazily. Okay, and then the other one here is a when sentence. And what I thought was I would use a group of words here. So I've said during the deliciously warm afternoon, the gods enjoyed looking at the world that they had created. So a when sentence, as you can see there, it's during the afternoon. And what I've also tried to do is I've tried to use some upskilled, exciting words. So deliciously warm there. Okay, so hopefully you had some similar sentences like that. What I'm going to try to do now is to introduce the independent task for this morning. Now what I've done is I've put onto the screen here 3 pictures which all come from the book. You might recognize them. And what I want you to do is to look at those pictures, and could you write some sentences that use frontal adverbial phrases about each of the pictures? Could you use a variety of how, when, where, and why? Now you don't have to do all of them for each picture. I'm not looking for that, but I am looking for at least 4 sentences, at least 1 of each, okay? And each one could be about one of those pictures. I don't mind which one, okay? And you could even use your imagination, okay, with the pictures. You don't have to be, if you're here, you could be thinking about why Ben is sat on the grass. You could come up with a reason of your own. You might want to talk about why this creature is walking down the branch, and you might even come up with a name for the creature. So you can be as imaginative and creative as you possibly can, but I would like to see at least 4 different frontal adverbial phrases. I'm going to give you about 20 minutes to do that. When you are finished, then please come back, but until then, press pause. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you've been able to write some sentences there this morning. Hopefully you've been able to use frontal adverbial phrases. Now what I want you to do now during the plenary this morning is have a look at the sentences that you have just created. And what I want you to think about now is maybe editing them to make them better. Maybe you could add expanded noun phrase into the sentence to give them a bit more detail. Maybe you could upskill the adjectives to make the sentences more exciting. And you've got all the thesaurus colour sheets and alternative words in your rainbow folder on the website. So 5 minutes, looking at the sentences that you've written, how could you make them better? And this is really going to be something we're working on in the classroom in the next few weeks. We'll be actually editing and redrafting how you can go through and make your work, make your writing better. Okay, so have a good day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.